I noticed that my Sigma versus Rokinon lens video is been kind of popular. There's been a lot of comments, a lot of views, and I feel a little weird about that because the two Sigma lenses I switched to, I only have one of those lenses now. I felt like I needed to do a little update video on what I'm using now and actually really what I've been using for most of the last year. Figured I'd show you what's in my kit now. Here's my lens bag. I went ahead and switched. This is the Tamron 70-200 that I've had for a couple years. But I just needed a 70-200 in my kit one day, and I went with the cheapest option. And it's can't do handheld with it or anything. The image stabilization not being there. But if you're on sticks, it's still a really sharp lens, and you'll see from some of the tests I do here in a minute that it's a great lens. So the two lenses I use the most are probably this 50-100 and the full frame Sigma 24-35. And the 24-35 is what I'm filming on right now. Again, one of the tricky things about doing a lens video is to be able to shoot it well with the lenses that you're talking about. But at least this gives you a frame of reference. I'll link up to the sort of review I did while boiling crawfish earlier this year when I first bought it back in the spring. It's a great lens. It's a full frame lens. It's only f2. It's not quite as fast as the 1.8s of the 18-35, but basically the 24-35 was my substitute for the 18-35. And the difference is it's got a bigger diameter. It's for full frame sensors versus the 18-35, which is for crop sensors. So that means no vignetting. I know 24-35 is kind of a weird zoom range, but just to reiterate what I said in that video is those are the two focal lengths I use the most. I like to get closer to a subject with a wider lens rather than try to use telephoto. It's just I tend to be more run and gun, so wider lenses are more friendly for handheld use. You know, it's easier if you need to get a close-up of something to be able to get close to it, whereas if you have a longer lens, you can't. Usually there's a limit to how far away you can get, especially if you're doing something indoors or whatever. So I tend to favor the wider lenses, and 24-35 that I'm using right now is probably my most used lens, with the 50-100 being a close second. And so I've got the 20mm Sigma Art, which has this big bulbous front element and the fixed hood on it. So this is kind of like my wide lens. It's not as wide as the 14mm Rokinon that I used to have, which I loved. But it's still it's fast. It's f1.4, which is really fast and really wide, and it gets the job done whenever I need a wide shot. Sigma does now have a 14mm Art Series lens, which I kind of been eyeing, but it's like $1,600. It's kind of crazy for such a specialty lens. That's really hard to justify, but I might rent that one day to have some fun with. But for now, the 20mm 1.4 is my widest lens, and for the most part that's been good enough. And then the other lens I've got is the 50mm prime lens. Now this is a little bit redundant because I got a 50-100mm f1.8 zoom, which is the cropped one. This is the full frame classic, just 50mm f1.4 lens, and it's just for situations where I want to have that full f1.4 range, to have that just kind of classic 50mm portrait lens. I don't use it a lot, and probably if I was to cut one lens out of my kit, this would probably be the one, because like I said, it is a little redundant. Though this lens at 50mm is slightly different frame than this lens at 50mm, and you'll see that here in a minute when I show you my lens tests. But it's a little sharper, a little faster, just a little bit nicer. Sometimes I like to put a prime just to kind of force myself to use a certain focal length, which is kind of how I worked with the Rokinons. And now I've got all these kind of combo zoom lenses and stuff. But all those lenses are great. You know, the big difference, usability-wise, I already kind of talked about in the last video, comparing the Rokinons to the Sigmas. You know, these do have autofocus with the red handle. You know, you can do the focus wheel to do mechanical focusing. It doesn't work that great, but that does seg me into the Global Dynamics United lenses that I have. Global Dynamics United is a little spin-off company from Jared Land, the president of Red Camera. He's got this little side company that makes the wooden handles, which I also have for my camera, and some other random odds and ends. They're going to be making like stingers. They've teased. So just weird little things. And they're kind of like it's like in a little experimental lab kind of. Now, this is one of the weirdest lenses you'll probably ever see. This is a 24 millimeter. It's, what it is, and I'll get some close-ups of it here in a minute, is it's just a rehoused, it's just the cheap Canon 24 millimeter f2.8 lens, rehoused in this like super heavy duty like metal, like unbreakable. This is designed to like be on gimbals or drones or like vehicles, like when you don't want to have to worry about like damaging your glass. Because it's also really tiny, which is the reason that I got them. I started with the 24 millimeter because, like I said, I like to shoot in the wide range. But the weight difference, you know, the Sigma Art Series lenses are great. They're really nice lenses, but they're also heavy. And usually that's kind of an indicator of quality. Just sort of an instinctual gauge of quality. You pick up a Rokinon, it's kind of light. That's because it's cheaper, it's lighter, it's whatever. You know, they're still fine. I'm not dissing them. But you pick up a Sigma, it's heftier. Like the build quality, you can tell is better. Depending on what kind of work you do, you know, like this, the 50 to 100 is a very heavy lens. Like this is probably like at least 5 of these, maybe like 10 of these in weight. So to counter that, these Global Dynamics United lenses are really cool. Now the trick is there's no manual focus ring or anything, so you have to be able to focus electronically, which in filmmaking can be trickier than with stills. So this paired with my red weapon with the side handle with the little focus wheel, it gives you a really nice kind of run and gun camera. So if I'm like going on filming a vacation video or something, this is a nice low profile lens to use. It's also the lenses I use when I'm trying to do gimbal shots, but the image quality, despite being like these cheap little Canons that have just been rehoused, is really good. That's kind of one of the interesting things about these lenses. You know, they're made by the president of Red Camera. So the guy that makes these 8K Super Cinema cameras also uses these little cheap $300 lenses on his stuff. If you follow him on Facebook, you'll see occasionally when he posts gear photos, he often has these lenses on there. So it's kind of when I saw that, it was sort of a validation of, you know, it's not always about using the best of the best of the best. There's time and place for everything. So these little guys, and I've got the 24, there's also this 40 millimeter. These are great. They're great walking around lenses. I use these, if you saw my infrared New York City video, I used these for some of the shots, and then I used the Sigma, the 24 to 35 that I'm filming this with for other shots. So I switched back and forth, but these were nice for walking around with. But the problem, you know, I wouldn't recommend them for like DSLR users because, again, you can't focus them and there's no focus ring, so external focus motors don't work unless you've got like some touchscreen focus system, which could be really finicky and not really practical for that. And even with the red, sometimes I have trouble. Occasionally the side handle on the focus wheel gets messed up and you have to like restart the camera or something. So that just shows that, you know, these being purely electronic, when there is an electronic problem, you're kind of screwed. You know, you can't just like quickly rack the focus and get it set. You have to, you know, 90% of what I'm shooting is on these Sigma lenses. And of these 4 Sigma lenses, you know, another 80-90% of that is on the 50 to 100 millimeter and the 24 to 35. So if you look at any of the client videos, the commercial work that I've done that I've uploaded over the last year, that's all mostly been on these Sigma lenses. So, you know, I could go shoot some stuff for this video, but you might as well just look at the work we've done. Another thing that's worth noting is the film. If you follow our channel, you know we've been working on a full-length movie called Clowns and Robbers for the last 2 years. We just recently finished it. But we shot that movie on and off over the course of a year. And over that year, I switched my lens kit. I actually got the new camera that we won from Red as well. Maybe 10 minutes of the movie of pickup shoots and things that we did that I actually shot on a slightly different camera with the Red weapon. And then also, most of it was shot on the Rokinon lenses, but that other 10 minutes or so was shot on the Sigmas. And for the most part, I mean, definitely, not even for the most part, absolutely nobody's going to tell when they're watching the movie. And that's kind of an important thing to bring up, I think, is it's really easy to get caught up in like pixel peeping and like, ooh, what are the differences between these lenses? But as I emphasized with the Rokinon's videos, it's all about usability. So the Rokinons are great because they're light, they're easy to use, they get the job done. These are a little heavier, they're electronic, so you can't quickly change them, but they still work great. And I think they're a little bit nicer. The image quality is a little bit better, but it's all about what you can afford and then what you use the lenses for. I feel like everybody's always trying to just have the best so that they can have the peace of mind and sleep good at night knowing that they pick the best ones. But with lenses, it's really a sliding scale, and it's really all about what you're shooting that day and what works for that. Obviously, I've got a bit of a mixed bag of a lens kit now, and it'll probably continue to change. That's another thing worth pointing out is, just because I made this one video at this one point in time, a year later, I could have a whole different kit of lenses. I don't know. It depends on, how my life evolves. But right now, these are what are getting the job done, and you can see the results for yourself on my channel with all the stuff we've shot this year. I'll link to a couple of the kind of highlight videos. We did this Western thing that looks really great. That was shot on these Sigmas. One lens I am holding out for, Sigma also just finally came out with a 24 to 70 millimeter art lens, which the 24 to 70 millimeter is like the perfect walking around lens. It's one that everybody should have in their kit. I used to have the Canon one a couple years back, and I sold it when I switched over to the Rokinon Primes. I did rent one, and I'll link to the Backyard Bayou episode that I shot, the Cross Lake video. I shot entirely with the 24 to 70. I didn't want to bring a huge bag of lenses with me. We were out on the water, and I wanted to try the Sigma 24 to 70, see how it looked. So I did rent one for that shoot, and you can just see the results for yourself. But I liked it, and I hope to buy one soon. So this is just where I'm at now. This is what I'm using now. I've shot some tests and comparisons just so you can kind of see what these lenses look like at different focal lengths. So this first test just goes through each of my lenses at f5.6, just showing kind of what they look like. And I'm just gonna cut through them with me standing in place in my office and just showing kind of what each focal length looks like. And then kind of you can tell for yourself the sharpness and how they look. And then I did another test, basically the same idea, but at f2.8, where I tried to keep my head roughly in the same frame in each shot, so you kind of get a sense of the depth of field. So instead of me just standing still through the focal range, I'm actually moving with each lens change to kind of maintain the same frame. So that'll give you kind of a depth of field comparison, as well as just kind of what these focal lengths look like, what the sharpness looks like, how they deal with light, etc. Just a quick and dirty kind of non-super technical comparison of how all these look. And again, if you have any questions or comments, I'll try my best to answer them. If you got anything you want to see more of, I might do another video. Thanks for watching. Give us a subscribe, a like, whatever. And yeah, that's that.